Hello there, Year 2. I hope that you had a super weekend and that you're ready and raring to go with a new week of learning. So this week, certainly for the start of the week, we are carrying on with our unit Maths. And today we are going to be comparing the mass of 3 objects. And you might recognise that learning objective from last week. Last week we were comparing the mass of 2 objects, so today we're taking it one step further and comparing the mass of 3. So for our lesson today, you're going to need your 2A workbook. If you have it, you're going to need some paper as normal in case you want to do any working out on there. You're going to need a pencil and your partner. Okay, let's get going. So starting with our InFocus task for today, on this slide you'll see that there are 3 weighing scales with 3 different jars filled up with different things. So in this first jar we have some jelly beans, in the second jar we have some marbles, and in that third jar we have some popcorn. Now I have measured the mass of each one for us already. So hopefully you can see that the jelly beans have a mass of 320 grams. The marbles have a mass of 490 grams. And the popcorn has a mass of 160 grams. Now I'd like you to think about this question. How could we compare the mass of the 3 jars? And I'd like you to think about trying to use the vocabulary that's written here in red. So we've got lighter, lightest, heavier, and heaviest. So how could we compare the mass of these 3 jars using that vocabulary? Just take a moment, pause the video, and talk to your partner. Okay, so there were a few different ways we could compare the mass of the 3 jars here. I've written down 2 examples of 2 sentences that we could use. So I've written that the mass of the jelly beans is lighter than the marbles. And I knew that because the mass of the jelly beans is 320 grams. And the mass of the marbles is 490 grams. So I know that 320 is a smaller number than 490. Therefore, they are lighter. The second way I compared them was with this second sentence. The mass of the marbles is heavier than the popcorn. And again, I looked at the mass of the marbles, which was 490 grams, and then the mass of the popcorn, which was 160 grams, and I saw straight away that 490 is a larger number, it has a larger value than 160, therefore the marbles are heavier than the popcorn. Perhaps those were the 2 sentences or a couple of sentences you came up with, or you might have thought of some more too. Great. So the next question I'd like you to think about is this one here on this slide. How could we find how much heavier the jar of marbles is than the jar of jelly beans? See if you can think back to last week when we were comparing masses. How did we find out how much heavier something was than something else? Have a think for one moment and talk to your partner. So hopefully you told your partner that we would be able to find the difference between the 2 of them. We need to find the difference between the mass of the marbles and the mass of the jelly beans. And when we're finding the difference, we normally would subtract. So in this case, we would be doing 490 for the mass of the marbles, subtract 320 for the mass of the jelly beans. Now we have some large numbers today. Our numbers have hundreds, tens and ones in them. So I'd like you to pause the video again and have a good think with your partner about how you would solve this calculation. 490 subtract 320. Have a think for a moment. Okay, so I'm going to talk about two different ways that we could find that difference between the two masses. I've got a picture of them here to remind us. Remember, we're finding the difference between 490 grams and 320 grams. Now, I have just talked about subtraction. However, we can also find that difference by using counting on. And when we're counting on, we're using addition. And for lots of us, sometimes that feels a bit more comfortable. We feel a bit more confident about using our counting on. So to count on, I started from my smallest number, the smallest mass in this case, which was 320. Now I counted on in jumps of 20. So I counted from 320 to 340. Then I added another 20 to take me to 360. Then I added another 20 to take me to 380. And then I added another jump of 20 to take me to 400. Now, when I landed on 400, I realised that I felt confident enough to do a larger jump, that I could do a jump of 50 this time, because I know that 400 add 50 equals 450. I'm getting there now, I'm nearly at 490. Then I did another jump of 20 to take me to 470, and then one more jump of 20 took me to 490, which is where I want to stop because that's the mass of the marbles. Now, once I did my jump, I then needed to add all of those jumps together to find the difference. So first of all, I added those jumps of 20 up, and I found that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jumps of 20. So I wrote out my number sentence: 20, add 20, add 20, add 20, add 20, add 20, 6 20s, which equaled 120. You could also have written 6 times 20 or 20 times 6. Then I added that final jump of 50. I must not forget to add that 50. So I then did 120 add 50, which gave me a total of 170 as my difference altogether. So now I can say that the jar of marbles is 170 grams heavier than the jar of jelly beans. And there we have it. That's the first way we can find the difference between the two. Okay, now let's have a look at that second way we could have found the difference between the two masses. That second way was by using subtraction. So this time, my number sentence says 490 subtract 320. Now, this might look a little bit tricky because we're not necessarily used to numbers that have hundreds in them. But once we use some base 10 to help us, I think we'll find that we can solve this one together. So just like when I'm subtracting two two-digit numbers, I subtract my tens first, then I subtract my ones. Today, we're going to start by subtracting our hundreds. So in 490, there are 4 hundreds. And here is my picture of my 4 100 blocks. I need to subtract 300 because we're taking away 320. So I'm going to cross out 1, 2, 3 of those hundreds. which, as you can see, leaves me with just the 100 left. So 400 subtract 300 equals 100. That's the trickiest part done. Then, like we normally do, we need to subtract our tens next. So in 490, there are 90 tens, and in 320, there are 20 tens. So I need to do 90 subtract 20, and I've actually got 90 in base 10 here. Let's just double check, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And I'm subtracting 20. So I'm going to just carefully cross out 1, 2 of those tens, which leaves me with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 tens left over. So 90 subtract 20 equals 70. So that's our hundreds and our tens done and subtracted. Now we need to subtract our ones. In 490 there are 0 ones. In 320 there are 0 ones. Lovely and simple, that one. 0, take away 0, as we know, is in fact 0. Then, as normal, we need to total up our answer. So we need to put 100 with 70 and with 0. 100 add 70 gives me 170. So the difference between the two masses is 170 grams. Super, so now we should be able to solve this next problem too. How could we find how much heavier the jar of marbles is than the jar of popcorn this time? So this time, my number sentence is going to say 490, because that's the mass of the marbles, subtract 160, because that's the mass of the popcorn. Have a little think to yourself. How could we solve it? There are two ways. Perhaps you can think which way would be better. Should we count on here or should we subtract? What's the most efficient method for us to use? Okay, so hopefully you guys all agree with me that when we look at the number 490 and the number 160, we notice that there's a really large difference between those two numbers. So counting on would take us quite a long time. We could do it, but it wouldn't be the most efficient method. So subtracting this time is going to be much more efficient for us. So let's have a look together. Again, we're going to start by subtracting the hundreds first. So in 490, we know there are 1, 2, 3, 4 hundreds. And we need to subtract 100 because there is 100 in 160. So let's carefully cross off and take away 100, which leaves us with, as you can see, 1, 2, 3 hundreds left over. So we can say that 400 subtract 100 equals 300. Next, we need to subtract our tens. So in 490 there are 90 tens, and in 160 there are 60 tens. So this time we're taking away 60 tens. Let's do that now carefully. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm left over with, let's have a look, 10, 20, 30 tens left over. So 90 take away 60 equals 30. And then again, we're taking away our ones to finish with. So 0 ones take away 0 ones leaves us with 0 ones altogether. Then we need to put our total together to get our final answer. So 300 add 30 equals 330. So we can say that the jar of marbles is 330 grams heavier than the jar of popcorn. Right, so before you start your guided practice, I'd like you to have a think about one more question where we're comparing the three masses. This time, can you order the three masses from heaviest to lightest? And the three masses are written just here for you. Can you have a go at doing that now on a piece of paper if you have your paper with you? Order them from heaviest to lightest. This should only take you about 2 minutes. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, so hopefully we found that the popcorn was the lightest mass. The jelly beans had the second lightest mass, or they came in the middle, and then the heaviest mass was the marbles. And the way that we knew the popcorn was the lightest was because 160 is the smallest number out of the three, and we know that because in 160 there is only 100, whereas in 320 there are 300s, and in 490 there are 400s. So 160 grams must be the lightest mass. Then we hopefully have spotted that 320 is the next heaviest mass, making 490 grams the heaviest at the end. Well done. Super, so now it's time for you to have your go with your partner at doing your guided practice activities. The first one, you're comparing the mass of 4 different sweeties. So you've got a lolly, fruit gums, toffees and jelly beans, and you need to look really closely at the mass of each of those, which is written underneath for you, and then fill in the gaps in the sentences underneath. So you're asked which sweet is the lightest, which sweet is the heaviest. In question C, you're finding the difference like we've just practiced together. How much lighter are the toffees than the fruit gums? So for that one, you're going to need to do some working out. You could do that on your blank piece of paper if you like. And then the last one, you're ordering them from lightest to heaviest. The second question, you're comparing the masses of the 3 children. So we've got Elliot, Amira and Sam. And again, you're finding who is the heaviest, who is the lightest, how much heavier Elliot is than Amira. For that one again, you're going to need to do your working out on a piece of paper. And the last one, again, you're ordering them from lightest to the heaviest. I expect this should take you about 10 minutes, seeing as we're having to do a little bit of working out today. So have your best go with your partner and good luck. Okay, well done everybody. Let's have a look through the answers together now. So in question 1, the first thing we had to do was find which sweet is the lightest. For that one, we should have got lolly. And I know that because 35 is the smallest number in those 4 masses. So it has the smallest value, which means that it's the lightest mass. Question B, which sweet is the heaviest? We should have got jelly beans because this time the mass of the jelly beans is the largest number. It's 320, which is larger than the other 3. Question C, how much lighter is the toffees than the fruit gums? Well, we should have got 70 grams here, and you could have counted on from 80 to 150 to find the difference, or you could have subtracted, and you could have done 150 subtract 80 to get 70. And then the last question, arrange the sweets from the lightest to the heaviest. We should have lolly, then toffees, then fruit gums, and then jelly beans. Really big well done if you managed to get all of those. Don't worry if you did make a mistake. Just put your letter C for check and you can come back to it at another time. Okay, and in question 2, First, we were asked who is the heaviest, and we should have put Sam, because Sam's mass is 35, which is larger than 24 and larger than 32. Question B, we were asked who is the lightest. We should have put Amira, because 24 is the smallest mass there. Question C, Elliot is, we should have 8 kilograms heavier than Amira, because 32 is 8 more than 24. And again, you could have found it by counting on or by subtracting. And that last question, arrange the children from the lightest to the heaviest. We should have Amira, then Elliot, then Sam. Again, a really big well done, Year 2. Okay, so for your independent work today, I would like you to complete in your workbooks 2 pages, page 199 and page 200. And they look a lot like the guided practice we just did together. In the first page, you have a picture of 3 different weighing scales with 3 different masses. However, the mass is not written there for you yet. So first of all, you need to add up the masses like you were doing last week to find out how much each object weighs in those 3 scales. So you should end up with 3 different masses that you can then compare in the sentences below. In question 2 on the second page, again, there are 3 scales for you because we're comparing 3 objects today. Again, you need to read the scale first and find the mass of each object. On these scales, the scales are counting up in intervals of 1 today. And once you've found the 3 masses, then you can compare them in the sentences below again. For this activity today, you are going to need to do lots of working out, especially when you're finding those differences again. So I suggest you do that on a piece of paper if you're working in your book. And then if you are working on paper, you will probably have room to squeeze in your working out around the outside. And once you find those masses at the beginning, make sure you write them down so that you don't forget. Best of luck! Okay, and to finish with, as always, we do have some challenges for you if you're feeling ambitious and you'd like to do an extra task. So today, there are 2 challenges which are true or false questions. The first one says 50 kilograms is lighter than 50 kg. True or false? And you need to explain your answer. So what I would love to see for these 2 here, where you're working out if they're true or false, is a super sentence that says, I think it is true because, or I think it is false because. So a full explanation. Question 2 says, I should use grams to weigh lighter objects. True or false? And then question 3 and 4 on your challenge are true or false questions too, actually. This time you have a picture and you have a comparison sentence using one of our mathematical symbols. So the question asks you to look at this comparison, decide if it's true or false, and then explain your answer again. So again, a full sentence to explain why you think it's true or why you think it's false. And lastly, you have another picture with another comparison sentence, and you need to look at it carefully, decide if it's true or false, and explain your answer. Good luck, and I look forward to being back for our next lesson tomorrow.